It's a wonderful crowd out here, and it's wonderful that you've organized this community. It's really remarkable. I want to ping pong off of a question that Christine asked, which is what technologies are not in the mainstream yet, but should be known in order to think about their or understand their impacts that they will have on things like the scalability of blockchain and security and a bunch of other things, and that is concurrency. So concurrency tends to be a blind spot in our thinking, and in particular, it shows up in blockchain. There's so much I could say about it, but one of the things that is really clear is that any smart contracting blockchain that is sequential is doomed to failure. And the reason it's doomed to failure is because most transactions, and whether these are financial transactions or transactions against other computational resources, are isolated. So just think about it, right? Someone buying an empanada from a street vendor in Santiago at the same time as someone else buying grilled tofu from a vendor in Shanghai, those transactions are almost certainly isolated. And the reason today's financial infrastructure and computational infrastructure scales is because they proceed concurrently, right? And so if you were then to say, no, we've got to funnel those all down to one single thread, that will just not work. And you see it every day out here in the Bay Area. If you have 8 lanes of freeway and good lane discipline with not too many people crossing lanes, right? That's the isolation of transactions. Then you get 8 times the throughput of a single lane of traffic. Now what happens if you funnel them down to one lane? Everybody's seen it. You all know, right? So it gets backed up. So the question is, what models of computation will give you a good, clean, crisp, simple account of this kind of isolation and concurrency? And it turns out that this family of models of computation have only come into being since the early 90s. And came into being once with the pi calculus. That was the first such. And then once the pi calculus was discovered, then it exploded. So there's the ambient calculus and the blue calculus and blah, 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 blah. So Robin Milner won the Turing Award for the pi calculus in a minute. I've only got 5 minutes here. We can talk afterwards. So Robin Milner won the Turing Award for the pi calculus. And with the pi calculus, he was answering one question exactly. So lambda calculus, which underlies, Lisp and ML and all of those wonderful functional languages, lambda calculus is to sequential computation as what is to concurrent computation. And pi calculus was the answer. Now, I found a tiny little bug in the pi calculus and fixed it. And once you fix that bug, you get a massive explosion in expressive power for the pi calculus. And that is the rho-calculus. And rho-calculus is at the heart of Rolang, which is the smart contracting platform on RChain. And one of the benefits of this technology is that RChain scales linearly. So the other chains, when you add nodes in the network, they get slower. With RChain, as you add nodes, it gets faster. And guess what? That's the way we've been scaling systems, computational systems, for the last 50 years. Right? You don't bet and pray on a software genius event. What you bet on is I can just throw more iron at the problem and get it done. So currently, with almost no optimization, RChain gets about 1,000 TPS per node per CPU. So if you have a network of 10 nodes, each node having 10 CPUs, that's 10,000 TPS. 20 nodes, 20 CPUs, that's 20,000, and so on up to about 1,000. And beyond that, we don't have the resources to test greater than 1,000 CPU machines. But that gives you 1 million TPS. So that's why you need to be worried about concurrency and why these new models of computation are going to really outstrip and overtake a lot of the way people think about computation. So with that, I want to thank you again, Allison, and love to all this community. So.